considering this statement, it is first important to note how the reconciliation with the dark past implies necessarily for moral values. First of all, it implies that immorality such as lying or stealing, robbery, would become normalized, and in this order of ideas, they would be acceptable by anybody and under any circumstance. For example, Thomas's behavior by being, well, by having many mistresses, and Sabina's behavior by being a mistress for many men, those values that are normally criticized by society would become normal, and they would become, in a way, the new law. Now, we have to take into account that Kundera in his book states the duality between betrayal and fidelity. And he specifically tries to put Sabina as an example for betrayal because he tries to resemble how Sabina represents lightness, while fidelity, that is, for example, represented by Teresa, resembles or represents weight. So again, this is a discussion between which is better, lightness or heaviness. Which one is the real burden? I consider that it is better to be heavy in this respect, because in order for a society or a state to exist, in order for it to prosper, and in order for it to actually work, it is necessary to have a certain set of values or laws that should be followed by everybody, that should be undoubtedly taken by every person, every individual in that society, and followed without actually being, in a way, rebellious to that set of values. The problem with this statement is that it implies that by accepting a dark past, we will be betraying, in a way, lightness. So it is trying to imply that these immoralities, which normally represent lightness, would suddenly become weightness, heaviness, and it would become a burden. However, we also have to take into account the Nietzschean concept of eternal return in this aspect, because even though these moral values, which are normally not accepted because they do not go according to society's principles or to a religious principle, these values, these new values, because they previously were not accepted and now they are accepted as values, would not necessarily have any implication on the notion of eternal return. That is, if a society does not base itself on eternal return, then by switching these values, it would not have to accept that eternal return either. Instead, the concept or the notion of eternal return would only determine that these values, these immoralities, could perfectly be performed by anybody, because they would not have because they would be good. They wouldn't be something criticizable or something that would cause negative consequences on the long term. So in a way, people would be able to act following these immoralities, and they would just feel okay with themselves, because it would not imply any consequence if they were to return again and again eternally, and they would have to perform or suffer the consequences behind these acts. So, a reconciliation with the dark past is not necessarily something bad for society. However, it's important to point out that there has to necessarily be a structure that controls and tells which these important or accepted values are. It doesn't matter if they are moral or immoral.